Welcome to this day in his story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that President Spencer W. Kimball and President Harold B. Lee share the exact same birthday, but were born 4 years apart? Learn that heart surgeon and future prophet Russell M. Nelson performed a high-risk heart operation on Spencer W. Kimball, which saved his life. Discover that during President Kimball's leadership, missionary work expanded to include 30,000 missionaries worldwide.
Imagine the CEO of a massive global organization. Like, close your eyes and just picture them at the absolute height of their power.
Right. You usually picture corner offices and, perfect health.
Exactly. Directing millions of people, managing this vast worldwide infrastructure. But now, imagine that same CEO operating with only half a vocal cord.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Recovering from open heart surgery and literally whispering their commands in this raspy, gravelly voice. It completely shatters our traditional picture of leadership, doesn't it?
It really does. It's a striking contrast. I mean, we are so conditioned to expect our global leaders to come from a pristine track.
Right, like elite boarding schools and all that.
Exactly. Elite schools, perfect resumes. But the life we are examining today proves that the ultimate executive training program sometimes looks a lot more like, sheer survival.
Welcome to your custom deep dive. You handed us a really fascinating biographical text today, The Diligent Life of President Spencer W. Kimball, and you basically asked us to figure out a central mystery.
Which is quite the mystery.
It is. How does a kid pumping water in the Arizona desert end up running a massive global organization, enacting these systemic changes that impact millions? So today, we're going to explore how early grit, personal tragedy, and a seemingly ordinary rural life forged this staggering work ethic.
And we really need to emphasize the scale here. Spencer W. Kimball served as the 12th president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Which is a massive institution.
Truly massive. And he was born on March 28, 1895, right in Salt Lake City, Utah.
And before we get too deep into the timeline, there is this incredibly fun detail in your source text.
Oh, the birthday connection.
Yes, he actually shares a birthday with Harold B. Lee, born on the exact same day, March 28th, just 4 years later.
That's a pretty wild coincidence.
It really is. The text explicitly notes that Lee gets a belated celebration tomorrow, but today. Today is entirely dedicated to unpacking the life of President Kimball. Okay, let's unpack this. To really understand the global leader he became, we have to go back to the forge of his childhood. When he was just 3 years old, his family moved to Thatcher, Arizona.
And turn-of-the-century rural Arizona was exceptionally unforgiving. Like, this wasn't a childhood of leisure or, theoretical learning.
Not at all.
Survival required active daily participation from absolutely everyone in the family unit.
Exactly. We're talking about intense physical manual labor as his daily reality. I mean, he was pumping water by hand just to keep the garden alive in the desert heat.
Which sounds exhausting on its own.
Yeah, and that's not all. He was milking cows, pulling weeds, pruning fruit trees, mending broken fences, painting buildings, and he had these 2 older brothers.
Ah, yes, the sibling dynamic.
It's so classic. Spencer was absolutely convinced that his brothers intentionally grabbed all the easy jobs and deliberately left him with the hardest, most grueling tasks on the farm.
It is such a universally recognizable sibling dynamic. I think anyone with older siblings can relate to that.
It really is. It's like the ultimate version of that frustration you feel in a group project. You look around and realize everyone else called dibs on the easy slides, and you are left doing the heavy lifting to actually save the presentation.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. But what is so crucial here is his takeaway. He didn't let that unfairness calcify into resentment. His profound conclusion, in his own words, was, "I don't complain, it made me strong."
And that internal reframing is the bedrock of his entire executive philosophy.
How so?
Well, he is actively choosing to view unfair hardship not as a punishment, but as resistance training. He's building a tolerance for the work no one else wants to do.
Wow, yeah. And that training wasn't just physical. He was receiving this intense education in resource allocation and organizational priority from a very young age.
Oh, you're thinking the tithing story.
Yes. There's this vivid story in the text about him walking up a dusty road with his mother to the bishop's house. Now, for context, in this church, a bishop is essentially the local congregational leader.
Like a frontline manager for the community.
Exactly. And back then, members often paid their tithing, which is a standard 10% donation using actual animals and produce. So Spencer asked his mom why they were taking perfectly good eggs to the bishop.
Her answer is just a masterclass in tangible visual education.
It really is. What did she tell him?
She explained that out of 10 eggs gathered from their chickens, the very first one goes into a small basket dedicated to Heavenly Father, and then the remaining 9 go into a larger basket for the family.
Which makes it so clear.
Right. It's a physical way for a child to understand that prioritization and institutional loyalty happen before personal consumption, not after.
But that foundation of family and faith was absolutely rocked by tragedy. When Spencer was just 11 years old, his mother died.
That's just heartbreaking.
It really is. He described this as the greatest trial of his young life. You can only imagine the utter heartbreak and disorientation for an 11-year-old boy losing his primary caregiver.
Absolutely devastating.
Yet it was through this devastating loss that he learned a core truth. He realized that, quote, one can endure almost anything.
What's fascinating here is how his father, Andrew Kimball, observed the results of this intense early discipline and emotional trauma.
Did it change how his father treated him?
Well, his father did eventually remarry, which brought some crucial stability back to the family, but he clearly saw something unique forged in Spencer. He actually made a formal prophecy about his son.
Wait, really? A prophecy?
Yeah. He noted that Spencer was an exceptional, obedient boy, and he dedicated him to be one of the mouthpieces of the Lord.
That is heavy.
It is. He explicitly predicted that Spencer would become a great leader and a mighty man in the church.
That is a staggering amount of expectation to place on a kid. But that early resilience seemed to push him to overachieve in literally every area of his young life.
He really didn't back down.
No, he wasn't just surviving, he was meticulously preparing himself. You see that drive for excellence manifesting in relentless habits. For instance, he maintained 100% attendance in Sunday school and primary.
And just to clarify for our listener, primary is the church's organizational program for children's religious instruction.
Right. And by the time he was 14, he had read the entire Bible from cover to cover.
Which is wild. If you've ever tried to read through the densely historical or legislative books of the Old Testament as a fully grown adult.
Like Leviticus or Numbers.
Yes. You know that requires an iron will. To do that at 14 shows a bizarre level of focus.
It really does.
But he didn't stop at reading. He applied that same fierce discipline to music. He learned to sing. He learned to lead music. He learned to play the piano.
And it paid off quickly.
It did. He was called to be the stake chorister when he was only 15. And let's translate that term. A stake, in this context, is a large regional district made up of multiple congregations.
So he has real responsibility.
Exactly. At 15, he isn't just leading a handful of kids. He's managing the musical program for an entire region. That's a huge undertaking for a teenager.
It is. And he kept at it until he was playing in a small orchestra. Decades later, he would actually alternate playing the piano at the weekly meetings of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles.
It's a perfect example of his commitment to complete mastery of whatever task was in front of him.
Okay, I have to push back a little bit here.
Sure, go ahead.
I mean, playing the piano is great. Organizing a regional choir at 15 is objectively impressive. But I see the parallel you're trying to draw with organizing voices, and I just don't know if it holds up.
You don't think it translates?
Well, the stakes of a bad choir performance are just a few off-key notes and maybe some awkward applause. The stakes of global leadership are millions of lives, massive budgets, and international logistics. How does keeping a beat bridge the gap to executive leadership?
It's a really sharp question. Obviously, the stakes are vastly different. But think about the mechanics of what he's doing at 15.
Okay, what do you mean?
Mastering an instrument requires the exact same daily, unglamorous, repetitive dedication that high-level management requires. You have to show up, practice the boring scales, and listen closely to others.
I guess that's true. It's the daily grind.
Exactly. More importantly, when you organize a regional choir, you are dealing with human capital. You are taking different voices, massive egos, different personalities, and wildly varying skill levels.
Right.
And you have to get them to harmonize and work toward a single unified goal without paying them. If you can motivate volunteers to achieve excellence, that translates directly to organizing people on a macro level. It is executive leadership in microcosm.
I see what you're saying. The mechanics of management are the same, even if the scale changes.
Precisely.
And you really see him scaling up in his adulthood. He graduated from Gila Academy in 1914. He originally had plans to attend the University of Arizona, but instead he accepted a call to serve a 2-year mission in the Central States.
Which was from 1914 to 1916.
Right. When he returned, he married Camilla Ehring, who was a school teacher at Gila Academy. They had 4 children together, and he began building this deeply robust professional career.
And his career path is really telling.
Yeah, he didn't jump straight into church leadership. He worked in banking, then insurance, and then real estate development.
And we shouldn't gloss over that sequence. Notice the order. Banking, insurance, real estate. He isn't just bouncing between day jobs.
What's the connection?
He is systematically acquiring the exact executive toolkit needed to run a global organization. Banking teaches him capital allocation and finance.
Makes sense.
Insurance teaches him complex risk management and actuarial realities. And real estate development teaches him infrastructure and community building.
That's a brilliant way to look at it.
Right. He also became a district governor for his local Rotary Club, and then in 1938, he was called as the stake president.
Which means he became the top regional ecclesiastical executive overseeing multiple congregations. And all of that localized infrastructure knowledge was put to the ultimate test just 3 years later.
The 1941 flood.
Yes. In 1941, a massive flood nearly wiped the entire Gila community off the map. This wasn't a minor inconvenience. Roads were washed out, crops were ruined, and homes were destroyed.
Absolute devastation.
And President Kimball was right in the middle of it. He had to figure out the logistics of distributing relief resources to terrified people when standard infrastructure had totally collapsed.
It was a nightmare scenario.
During this crisis, he worked closely with Elder Harold B. Lee.
Oh, the man he shared a birthday with.
Exactly. Who was then a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles and in charge of the church's massive welfare program.
This localized disaster is a critical juncture in his life. The 1941 flood was the ultimate proving ground.
How so?
It's one thing to understand risk management in theory. It is entirely another to manage supply chains, deploy volunteers, and keep people calm while standing in literal mud.
Right. It's real-world application.
Exactly. He proved to the higher-ups that he could handle intense, chaotic pressure.
And that capability absolutely launched him onto a global stage. In 1943, at the age of 48, President Heber J. Grant called Spencer W. Kimball to the Quorum of the 12 Apostles.
Which is a huge shift.
Right. For our listener, think of the Quorum of the 12 as the global board of directors for the church. He served in that quorum for 3 decades, traveling constantly, strengthening members, and fostering international growth.
But this era was also incredibly difficult for him personally.
Yeah, this era of massive influence was simultaneously marked by immense, almost unimaginable physical suffering.
His health battles were agonizing. When he was 62 years old, he developed throat cancer.
Oh, man.
He had to have a significant portion of his vocal cords surgically removed. For a man whose entire vocation involved public speaking, teaching, and ministering to massive crowds, losing his voice is a profound, almost ironic trial.
I can't even imagine. He must have been devastated.
He had to completely relearn how to speak. And he was left with a very distinct, quiet, gravelly whisper for the rest of his life.
And the physical trials only escalated from there. In 1972, while he was serving as the acting president of the Quorum of the 12, he suffered a series of devastating heart attacks.
His condition was incredibly precarious.
It was. It required high-risk open-heart surgery. Keep in mind, this is 1972. Open-heart surgery wasn't the routine procedure it is today. It was incredibly dangerous.
Absolutely. And the surgery was performed by Dr. Russell M. Nelson, who was a pioneering cardiothoracic surgeon.
And Dr. Nelson's account of that specific surgery is remarkable, isn't it?
It really is. Years later, when Elder Nelson was himself serving in the Quorum of the 12, he recounted the experience. He noted that as President Kimball's heart resumed beating after the repair, leaping with power and vigor inside his chest, the Spirit made known to Dr. Nelson right then and there that this patient on his operating table would live to become the prophet of God on earth.
Wow, that gives me chills.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are looking at a man historically described as small in physical stature, but with a great appetite for work.
Yeah.
You have a leader whose physical body is systematically failing him. Throat cancer, lost vocal cords, massive heart attacks, and yet His spiritual and institutional momentum is somehow reaching its absolute peak.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Look at the rapid timeline of what happens next. It's late 1973. President Harold B. Lee passes away unexpectedly.
The same man he shared a birthday with.
Exactly. Just 4 days after President Lee's death, on December 30th, 1973, Spencer W. Kimball is set apart as the 12th president of the church.
And despite his advanced age and his incredibly frail physical state, he didn't view the presidency as a retirement phase.
Not at all.
He didn't just maintain the status quo or delegate the heavy lifting. He initiated an era of massive, unprecedented theological and organizational expansion.
Let's break down the sheer mechanics of his output. Even before his presidency in 1969, he released a book called The Miracle of Forgiveness, which became a deeply vital part of his legacy.
Right.
But as president, his structural achievements were staggering. In 1979, under his direction, the church published its own official edition of the King James Bible.
Which is a massive undertaking.
Then in 1981, they published a new edition of the Triple Combination.
Right, which is the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price bound together.
Exactly.
And we really need to pause on how monumental that is. Creating a new edition of the scriptures isn't just, sending a file to a printer.
Especially back then.
Right. Before the era of modern high-speed computing, this was a massive database management project. He directed the standardization of thousands of cross-references, footnotes, and chapter headings for a global audience.
Wow.
It essentially unified and standardized the theological education of millions of people across completely different cultures.
He also directed that these newly standardized scriptures become the foundational basis for the church's Sunday school curriculum globally.
Which changed how everyone learned.
And on top of that, he established the consolidated 3-hour block meeting schedule on Sundays. He completely restructured how, when, and where millions of people worshiped every single week.
The logistical nightmare of synchronizing a global operating rhythm like that is just mind-boggling.
Exactly. And alongside that massive internal structural work, he dramatically expanded their outward reach, pushing the missionary force to 30,000 missionaries operating worldwide.
That is explosive growth.
But perhaps the most historic, culturally shifting moment of his entire presidency occurred on June 8, 1983.
Yes, the 1983 revelation.
President Kimball announced a revelation affirming that every faithful man in the church, regardless of race, could receive the priesthood. The global and cultural impact of that expansion simply cannot be overstated.
It was a complete paradigm shift that altered the entire trajectory of the institution.
Absolutely.
Yet, what is so striking to me is that amidst all this massive global expansion, amidst publishing standard works and completely restructuring international logistics, he kept his focus incredibly personal.
He really did. He was constantly urging parents to physically hold their children, no matter how old or big they were, and tell them that they love them and are glad they are theirs forever.
That's so tender for a guy running a global organization.
It is. He never lost sight of the individual family unit amidst all the macro management. He famously summarized his priorities by saying, quote, "Of all treasures of knowledge, the most vital is the knowledge of God."
This raises an important question. How does a man operating with a raspy whisper, a surgically repaired heart, and a body racked by decades of intense illness drive so much massive institutional change?
Right.
How does one man oversee that level of global expansion?
I think the answer takes us all the way back to Thatcher, Arizona. It goes right back to the kid pumping water in the extreme heat.
The resistance training.
Yes. It lies in his lifelong refusal to take the easy jobs that his brothers supposedly hoarded. He never expected the work to be comfortable. He just expected the work to be done.
That really is the key to his character.
And he maintained that relentless, grueling drive to serve right up until his death on November 5th, 1985, after serving nearly 12 years as president of the church.
After he passed away, his counselor, President Gordon B. Hinckley, offered a tribute that perfectly captures this entire ethos.
Oh, I'd love to hear that.
President Hinckley recalled a time when he tried to get the aging, frail President Kimball to just slow down a little bit and rest.
Which makes sense.
Right. And President Kimball replied, "Gordon, my life is like my shoes to be worn out in service." And President Hinckley noted, "He so lived, he so died."
My life is like my shoes to be worn out in service. I want to turn this directly to you listening right now. When you look at your own life and the friction you are facing today, what character traits are you developing that will actually equip you to lead and help others tomorrow?
It's a great question to ask yourself.
When you look at the life of Spencer W. Kimball, you see that the seemingly mundane, painful chores, pumping water, enduring the devastating loss of a mother, learning the boring piano scales, managing a local flood, those were the exact, precise tools that prepared a young boy for global leadership.
Every hard job was just resistance training for the next one.
So what does this all mean?
It means that the obstacles in our way aren't preventing our development. The obstacles are the development. The hard jobs are the curriculum.
Exactly. Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. We started this deep dive talking about our modern expectation of a pristine, highly optimized executive path.
Right, the corner office dream.
In an era where modern leadership is increasingly obsessed with, delegation, optimizing personal downtime, and protecting our own boundaries, we have to ask, does a leader's willingness to personally suffer and completely wear themselves out alongside their followers generate a type of fierce loyalty that money and corporate strategy simply can't buy?
That's a fascinating way to look at it.
Is our relentless pursuit of a perfectly comfortable, stress-free life actually preventing us from leaving a lasting footprint? Something to think about. Until next time. Thank you for joining us for this day in his story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in his story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.